Good afternoon, everyone. This is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of That Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to come join our Facebook group. That link is in the video description and at the end of this video. And of course, if you're catching us live on Facebook, don't forget about our YouTube channel where you can easily find all of our videos after they are live in our neatly organized playlists. We're continuing on with our White Toner Wednesday, and today I'm going to be showing you the second one-step paper that's available from the iColor line for the Uninet line of papers for the iColor printers. We are working on the iColor 550 White Toner printer. And we are starting a series where we're going through each of the different papers. So last week I went ahead and covered the one-step speed light trans for light textiles. And today I'm just going to do the one-step light. These are the two different options for a one-step paper. Now, a one-step paper is one that you print and press. There's no marrying process, meaning you don't have to add any kind of adhesive to it. It's just ready to go. One of the downfalls of the one-step papers is that they have the lowest washability rating with just around 15 plus, but they are also the cheapest and in some cases the fastest transfers in terms of the white toner papers that you can use on textiles. I keep trying to reiterate that it's really important to understand there are 24 different types of papers for different substrates, and each one is going to have a different type of result. You want to try and work on each one and test them out and determine what you think is the most beneficial for your business. The biggest mistake I see people make in the white toner world is they buy a printer and they spend the money on the printer, but then they don't take the time to learn how to use the software or learn the difference between the different papers and the right types of substrates for them. The iColor print website has this handy little chart which you can print off, and this gives you a breakdown of the different papers, and it actually even tells you what the washability is of each paper and what it's best suited for, whether it's suited for delicate garments or not. So just something to keep in mind. We'll start with the ProRip software, and I'll walk you through that and a couple of different options for rasterization, and then we'll head over to the heat press and we will go ahead and press our transfer. Let's go ahead and get started. The iColor ProRip software is one of the most valuable tools for your printer. A lot of the complaints that you see people make about their transfers not feeling as soft as they want on a garment relate to the fact that they either aren't using the software or aren't using it properly, or they're using the wrong types of transfer paper for their garment. One of the reasons why we're going through all the different types of garments, or all the different types of transfer papers and the best garments that they are suited for, is to help people better understand what to use when and where. Within the ProRip software, you are able to manipulate things like the toner output, ink removal, and create other modifications that will enhance the end result of your transfer and your garment. Now, because we're using the one-step paper, there's only going to be so much we can do to improve how this feels. Keep in mind that the two-step papers are a much better option for garments that you plan on selling as part of your business. The one-step papers, the one-step light trans speed that we demoed last week, and then just the one-step light that we're doing today, are both lower cost papers, and they produce lower cost results that only have about 15 plus washability rating. So that means that they're really more ideal for promotional runs or like event shirts and things like that are not going to be something that someone is going to wear all the time, wash all the time, and plan to have for a long period of time. When we open up our ProRip software, the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and select our paper type. You can do that right here in our little drop-down list. We're using the one-step light, as I already mentioned. And again, you'll notice that there is the option for with holes and with stripes. Now, if you select with holes or stripes, this is going to provide automatic rasterization to the entire page. This is not what I want to do today because I want to show you guys a few different options for how you can go about rasterization for a design. So I'm going to select just the one step light, and you'll notice that the paper type automatically changed to coated glossy thick. This paper type specification should match the instructions that are provided with the paper. Again, the instructions that are provided are very detailed, so it makes it kind of foolproof when it's all said and done. The next thing we want to do is import our design. So I'm going to go ahead and select the open, which is the green plus sign. Your design needs to be in CMYK. If you purchase your design, elsewhere from my shop, somewhere on Etsy, keep in mind that it's most likely in RGB, and you can easily convert the color profile by opening up your design program, such as GIMP, Photoshop, Affinity Designer, or Corel, and you can change the color profile that's embedded in that file. Now, that's always, of course, assuming that the profile was actually embedded. If it's not, you will know that when you print and it looks faded that it was not. So I want to print off one sheet so you guys can see that's just going to be the two that we're not going to use. So I'm kind of just going to waste a transfer sheet. And that's because, again, I'm going to show you two different options for how you can go about rasterization. All right, so now that our design is loaded, I'm going to shrink this down. I only want this to be half of a page. So I think that if I just, there we go. If I just modify the height, that's just about right. So our first print, our first design, I'm not going to do anything to. This is ready to go. It is ready for us to print right now. It's automatically mirrored because that's what's required for the transfer itself. So next I'm going to hit duplicate, and I'm going to add another one of these. And when we click on it, it's on a separate page. So what we're going to do is click on page and then nest all. And as long as your different pieces will fit, they'll both appear on one page. So we have them just like that. And now you can see in our queue, when we click on them, different ones line up. So the top one is actually on the bottom in our queue, and the bottom one is in the top in our queue, just to confuse you. Now I want to go ahead and apply rasterization just to one of these so that I can show you the difference between the two of them when they're printed. Anytime you have a design that has a lot of dead space, zoom in so you can see this better, or I'm sorry, that doesn't have dead space, you want to use some form of rasterization. This is not only going to improve the feel of it and the stretch of it on your garment, but it's also going to improve the washability. This particular design is set up so that the outline of these letters that you see as white is actually white toner. Now, this entire area, the bomb, these words, and the flowers is going to feel like a thick patch on our garment without any rasterization. Now, even though this paper is designed to be thinner, we're still going to be, have a certain type of texture and a lack of stretch that some people aren't really going to like on their garment. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to select this one, and I'm going to go to Jobs, Properties, and I'm going to apply rasterization to just that one design. And the reason why it's only going to go to that one is because we have it selected. If you had chosen the paper with the holes or lines, then any adjustments that we made in this job ticket properties panel, it would apply to the entire sheet. So we'll go down here and we'll click on ink removal. And you'll see that under shape, there are a variety of shapes that you can choose from. Part of learning all about white toner printing is really taking the time to trial and error and figure out what you like the most. I have not tried all of these different shapes, but I decided that I would follow some of the recommendations that were put in the white toner transfer support group. If you're not in this group on Facebook, I highly recommend joining it. It actually was founded by the COO and Vice President of Uninet, Joe Dovey. And there are a lot of people in there who have spent ample time doing wash testing and trying out all these different options for rasterization within the ProRib software to figure out what they like most and what settings work best and what's most appealing to their customers. Unlike some of the other garment printing techniques, this is not one that you set up and go. This is one that the more time you invest into learning how to use things like the ProRib software, how to navigate rasterization, how to understand the different papers and what papers work best on which type of garments, all of that stuff is going to make a huge difference in your end product and is honestly going to be the difference between you being happy with the product that you have and being able to sell it to your customer for a high volume or for a high profit versus having an item that you don't like and being one of those people that we see that just hate their printer, but the reality of it is they just don't know how to use their printer and didn't take the time to learn. So the settings that I'm going to use are to choose the line shape, and I'm going to do an angle of 45 degrees and a frequency of 26. The hole size is going to be 180. And then, yes, bigger holes, less ink. Okay. And in addition to setting your rasterization lines, depending on the color of your garment, you may also want to make some color adjustments. So that's just something you need to keep in mind. Depending on, there we go. That's just something you want to keep in mind. Depending on your design and the garment. So you can come in here and you can kind of adjust your various hues through the different settings. And, you know, again, you're not really going to know until you print it and press it how the end result will look. But just keep in mind that when you choose the rasterization option, it is going to automatically dull down your print. So you're going to want to make a few color adjustments in terms of the saturation and the brightness to get you the best end result. So just exit out of here. The OK button is off of my screen and I can't get it to show up. So sorry about that. So now we have our first two prints on one page. And I made these smaller because I just want to be able to show you these. These are not actually going to be the ones that I do on the garment. Now, I made this design, which means I have the flexibility to make some modifications to the design. So if I click over on my Affinity Designer, we can see my original design. And the way it would normally look is like this with white outlines. I removed the white outlines in preparation for this video. But what I did is I created duplicate layers of my text. And then I set them to erase. I'm using Affinity Designer for anyone who doesn't know or wants to know. So I set them to erase, and by doing the erase, this is going to give me negative space around all of this text. In addition to that, because I made this design, I can go ahead and add some type of distressing or other forms of negative space to different parts of my design. For example, all of this area that we see that's a black distressed pattern in my text, I could easily make that a pattern that was a negative space pattern. And that would be really beneficial depending on the color of my shirt. For this, it's not, I want to keep it black, but what I do want to do is add a distressing to the bomb. And I've already set that up just so I could show you guys really quickly. When I check it in my layers panel, so it shows up for you, there you go. You can see I've added this texture. And again, using the erase setting, it's creating an automatic negative space. Everyone has their own preferences. For me personally, even if I didn't make this design and I had to get creative with working around the curves and whatnot of a PNG file just to apply rasterization to just the bomb or just to this text, I would want to do it just because I prefer a more solid look for a lot of the designs that I do. And especially when it comes to a white toner shirt, I want to have a little bit more control. I'm going to show you guys the comparison of the 3 transfers when we print them here in a minute, and you'll see what I'm talking about, where you'll see the difference between the 45-degree lines versus this look with where we've applied the distressing, where we've added some dead space just around the text and just little things that are going to give it a softer feel on the garment. Once again, everyone has their own preferences. I highly recommend taking time to test all these different theories out and find out what works for you and what you think is going to be most appealing for your customer. I've already exported this, so I just want to go ahead and import that and bring it into our program. So I will hit open up my new one. This one will go onto a new page once it loads. I'm going to go ahead and click on rotate 90 degrees so it fits on my page. I will adjust this to the size I actually want it to be printing. Since I'm doing a medium shirt, I think 10.5 inches is suitable. And then I'll go ahead and click the center on page option. And we are ready to print. So we're going to make sure to select everything in our queue. And then we'll go ahead and hit our print job. And this will take just a few seconds to get to their printer. So I'm going to turn you guys over and put you on the heat press. This is what our completed transfer looks like. And before I press this, I'm going to show you guys kind of the difference between what we did, which was because I made the design, I had the option to implement my own form of rasterization or creating dead space. And I did that by making the outline of all the letters erase, and I added a textured pattern over the bomb instead of I didn't add it over the flowers, I just added it over the bomb. And this works because I am putting this on a light colored garment, so I don't have to worry about, if this was a purple garment, that this area where it's white would be purple and not pop as much. Now, if you didn't make your design yourself, then you have to kind of work around in terms of your rasterization techniques. So here we have the design completely without any type of rasterization. While this looks beautiful and is fine, when this is pressed on your textile, this whole section here is going to feel very thick. In addition to that, it's not going to have very good stretch, and it's more likely to break down with washing because there's nowhere for the water to flow. The areas that are white around this are actually white toner instead of this being dead space. If you use the full rasterization feature within the ProRip software, you would get this result. Or, there's a bunch of different shapes that you can choose from, but this is the one that I showed you guys where I did the vertical lines the lines at 45 degrees. So you can see that this does your entire design. And again, this is one of those things that you can play around with, decide what you like. I personally don't like this particular style for everything. I think that it's great on certain types of designs that you might work on, but this one, because I made this design, I decided it would be better to rasterize this by creating some dead space on my own with different features in my design. So just something to keep in mind. So the first thing that we're going to do, I already pre-pressed our garment just to make sure it was nice and smooth. We're using a Time and True 60% cotton, 40% polyester blend today. Sorry, I'm going to pull that right off. We need to preheat our pre-press our heat press first. And in order to do that, we just close the press and let it heat for about 30 seconds. The reason why we're going to do this is because the bottom platen plate does not emit heat, and we want to make sure both are warm for this transfer. That is what's recommended in the directions. It is not the same for all papers. It's important to definitely read those steps. Now you'll notice I'm not using any kind of a fancy heat press. This is just a 16 by 20 press and release heat press from acesdeals.net. Very basic. Now that our bottom is lowered, or our bottom platen plate is warmed up, we're gonna go ahead and stick our garment up there. And get our transfer centered. So once again, I went ahead and created my own form of dead space in the design to help improve how this is going to feel, its stretch and washability. If you make your own designs, that's always an option. If you buy your designs, if you have the design talent, you can definitely make that happen. If you don't, you might just have to get creative. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is straight and centered. Get my laser level lined up. I think we can bring this down just a little bit. The line on the paper is a nice feature because your design, in theory, was printed straight. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly measure this on either side. I'm measuring based on the design, not by the edge of the paper, because the design, although we centered it, did not actually print centered in the paper. Let's go over just a little bit. All right, so we are centered. You can choose to put some tape to secure your transfer if you would like. You do not use adhesive spray with white toners prints, so I'll just go ahead and stick a little piece on either corner. We will cover this with a Teflon sheet and we are ready to press. The first press is 15 seconds. We're using medium pressure and I'm doing 390 degrees because that is what is recommended on the instructions, but you can go all the way down to 305 depending on the garment you're using. Now the instructions say to give this about 10 seconds before we peel it, which is just about enough time for me to remove the Teflon sheet and put on my glove. And then I'm going to use a slow, steady. There we go. Sorry, my transfer was stuck to the glove. All right. Kind of pull that forward. The garment's really warm. So you can see there's our design. And now we're going to do the second step. You don't even have to wait for it to cool or anything. You can just go right ahead and do your next step, which is to move that up a little bit, is to use the craft paper, sorry. This is the special craft paper that's provided with your printer. This is not just any old craft paper. It has a special coating on it so that it doesn't stick to your white toner print. We're going to put that down and we're going to do our fixing step for 30 seconds. And again, it's still at 390 degrees. There's no change in the temperature. And just if you wanted to see the transfer after it's been pressed, that's what it looks like. Pretty much all the toner's off that paper, which is pretty cool. Right. We're gonna give this just a second before we pull off the craft paper, because if we move too quickly, we'll risk pulling up our design. And you can just kind of, honestly, if you just like gently kind of jiggle it as you pull it up, that's usually all you need. And then the last thing we're gonna do is just give this a nice good stretch to really help make sure that our toner is all in our garment and is adhered well to the fabric. This helps improve washability, helps improve longevity of the design. Now, if you remember last week, we did the Speedlight Trans. And I said that one of the things I didn't like about it was that all the dead space on the one-step Speedlight Trans or Light Speed Trans paper was that it had like the residue from the paper in all the dead space. This does not, so I'm already impressed by that. I think the design looks really good. My lighting's not the greatest in here, but hopefully you guys can get the picture. It feels pretty soft to the touch, and I don't mean soft like it feels teddy bear soft. I mean, it feels soft like you really can't tell too much of a difference between the fabric and the print, other than the fact that the texture is a little bit different, but it's not noticeably raised off the fabric or anything like that. So unlike screen printing, this is much smoother bonding with the fabric. And this is even a one-step paper. So this isn't even one of the better quality ones for doing garments. This is just, you know, this is one that has pretty low washability and it already has a much better feel than the other one-step paper, and it has a much better feel than something like screen printing and definitely better than vinyl. So as I keep expressing to you guys, that end feel that so many of you are concerned about really depends on your garment type, your papers. So I hope that you keep following along with our videos as we go through all the different papers and review them and kind of give you an idea of what to expect. In terms of using this for your business, the cost for an 8.5 by 11 sheet is about 75 cents. So I think that that's really reasonable, really cheap for something like this. That's one step that's, you know, from print to final press, it probably takes you a minute and a half. But because this only has about a 15 or so washability, I don't think that I would use this all the time, but I definitely think it would be good for any, you know, not necessarily promotional shirts, but if you just happen to be doing something for an event that maybe, you know, it's not going to be something you wear all the time. It's not going to be your favorite shirt. And in terms of like selling to your customers, something to keep in mind. So once again, don't forget about using different types of rasterization techniques to help improve the feel of your transfer on your design. And if you have questions, just leave them in the comments. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.